Hello and welcome. This is Heavy Business. I'm Aaliyah.
And I'm Curtis.
And today we are joined by NJ Borreta of DadBod Production House. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Aaliyah, and thank you, Curtis, for having me.
Absolutely. Can you start things off by giving us a brief summary? My brain is failing me. A brief summary of who you are and what you do in the realms of metal.
Yeah, so my name is NJ Borreta. I'm, I guess, primarily a musician. I've been playing music within the genres of punk, hardcore, and metal for most of my life. That's going over I guess 25 years now. And very recently, I guess up until a year ago, I decided to start up my own business. The mandate of that business is to provide artist management and consultancy solutions for musicians out there like myself, and lean on the experiences that I've had as a musician, as well as leaning on the learnings that I've had working in the corporate world and the things that I've learned through business and things like that. And that's how I formed DadBod about a year ago.
Now, can you give us like a little summary of what DadBod is, what you do in a little more depth?
Yeah, absolutely. The mandate of DadBod is to help musicians with getting started, as well as with the projects they have moving along. I like to think back on some of the challenges and kind of growing pains that I've had as a musician through the years. And I thought to myself, what are the things that I've learned that I can share with my peers, my fellow musicians out there, to help them so that they can succeed, and maybe avoid a little bit of those challenges that I've encountered along the way, or at least have the tools to be able to encounter those challenges in a way that is a little easier for them. So some of I guess that the main service that I offer is grant writing. And the foundation on that is based on the fact that a lot of times when you're a musician, when you're a band starting out, capital is the main thing that you need to get the ball rolling. Especially if you're a brand new band, a young band, you don't have a lot to start with, yeah, other than, of course, your talent and your ambitions. But with the help of grants and the service that I provide in writing those grants, I hope that I'm able to provide a means for those musicians to potentially access that capital so that they can use it towards recording, video production, marketing, or touring. And then the other pieces where I help out with are related to artist management. I make EPKs, a little bit of PR, and then I guess my more favorite hands-on aspect of it is I guess like a tour or stage management. So coordinating, planning tours, activities related to releases, that kind of thing.
Cool. Now the grant writing thing, we have listeners in North America, USA, and Canada, and internationally. The grant writing service that you provide would be only for Canadian bands, correct?
That is correct. Yes. At least at this point, that's I guess that's the scope of my knowledge in terms of grants. I know there's other opportunities out there in the other countries, but right now my main focus is the Canadian market.
I want to touch on something silly for a brief second, NJ. So why the name?
So I guess let's start off with the fact that I am literally a dad, and it's part of my identity and who I am. but I find a parallel in I guess the challenges that I've had with fatherhood, and also the nurturing aspect of being a dad. So I figured, I can apply that same sensibility with my business acumen and how I do things. And particularly around DadBod, the this this visual of of a dad who has a big gut is is a status in that, it shows that there's wisdom and that there is experience behind that gut. It's a mark that shows that you've been through it and that you put in time and you put in sacrifice, often maybe at the behest of your health or the way you look, but it's something that I feel that is something that you could wear proudly, because it shows that you've kind of earned that status, and that that is the byproduct of the effort and care that you put into the thing that you love.
I wasn't expecting that. That's cool. That's very cool.
That was deep.
That was very deep.
Yeah, it's it was a weird like epiphany, how it came about. And so some things are magical in how they line up, and I was just like, just one of those moments where you're laying in bed at night and just kind of the light bulb goes off. It's like, oh my god, this is these two things are very alike, and I kind of want to handle it very similarly and have the same amount of care in how I do this particular thing.
That's awesome. So before we get into the questions that Aaliyah had, can you kind of go over, because you keep mentioning it, but you haven't really said what your actual background is, because you keep talking about your business knowledge.
Oh,
are
yes.
you willing to say what your actual background is for the listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess like on the professional end of things, I was my background is in pharmacy technician. So I worked in retail pharmacy for many years, and as well as hospital pharmacy, and then eventually worked my way into the administrative and corporate end of things. So for the better part of a decade, I'd been working within the healthcare insurance industry, and in a way, it was strange how it helped me develop certain skills that I ended up applying within my business. So things like account management, business development, and agile methodologies. These are all things that I apply in how I work. But yeah, in my most recent position, I was an account manager. So there's so many similar things in how I did things with that job and how I treat my clients. Mainly, the emphasis on the fact that they are and should always come first when it comes to I guess the hierarchy of importance, and me being able to thoroughly understand what their needs are.
You're muted, Curtis.
1 second. My button wasn't going there. I'm sorry. So now just to clarify on that, so you were in the corporate world, and then now DadBod is your full-time job, right?
Yes. And I'll clarify on that a little bit, because within DadBod, there's, I guess, three facets that I generate my revenue from. So there's the piece that I elaborated on earlier around the grant writing, and the EPKs and the PR, and I guess the project management aspect of things. But through DadBod, I also freelance as a backline technician for a backline rental company based out of Toronto called Backline Plus. And it's also through that particular avenue that I was able to network and work with some really great artists and musicians at a very a very close and intimate space, because it's right there on the stage with them that where I would be interacting. So I would set up their gear, I'd hang outside stage, make sure everything goes okay. If there's any issues, particularly involving the music gear, I'd have to act quick to remedy those problems, whether it's technical or operational or logistical. So that's one part of it. And then the third part is, I guess, a recent, more intimate artist management kind of gig, and I guess I would call it like operational management for Canadian jazz icon Molly Johnson, whom I had the privilege of meeting through my networking through this backline freelance gig. So 30% of my time is devoted to her, and in the short period of time I've had the privilege of working with her, I've been on the road with her a few times, and I've also been providing administrative support in terms of planning her future tours and shows. And a little nerdy thing that I really like doing is preparing her artist rider. So like she's great because it's not about having to have a bowl of green M&Ms or anything like that, but nonetheless it's about making sure that all of her hospitality and performance requirements are met, so that there's a satisfactory and excellent performance every night.
Cool. And I got one more before Leah gets into the question. So how did you land your first client?
So I've been privileged with being able to build a network of friends amongst the musician community in all of those years that I've been performing. So it was very organic and natural that when I started to converse with my fellow musician friends about this initiative that I had, that a few of them were ready to jump right on board, and I'm very grateful to them, and I'm definitely indebted to them for allowing me to take on this challenge, and for them to trust me too, especially because it was a new venture for me. So I've been lucky in that sense, in that my first client was one of my musician friend bands that took a chance on me, and yeah, it's from there. It's I think ever since then I haven't really had to seek anybody out. It's just been referral based since then. So I've been very lucky.
Cool. I'm good, Aaliyah.
Awesome. So you mentioned before we started recording that you had some grant writing idea that you were talking to Curtis about at a show you guys were at the other day. I don't have the luxury of going to those because I'm in Chicago, USA, but can you go into depth a little bit about what you were bringing up?
Yeah. So one of the observations that I've had working through the grant writing process was the bureaucratic hurdles that came along with the application. Naturally, there's going to be an aspect of that because the grant facilitators also have to go through their due diligence and make sure that that as an applicant that you're meeting their requirements. But I don't know. I feel that it's way more administrative than it has to be, and there's a gatekeeping aspect to it that is a limiting factor to musicians and bands out there, almost to the point where it's discouraging. And I don't feel that it should be like that. I feel that it should be a resource that's available to those who need it. And if if you can show that you've put in the work and the time and have ambition and plans, that you should get those grants. But other than the administrative hurdles, there's also I guess certain interests that I felt were a little less relevant to how bands are performing and operating these days. Key example would be a favored metric that grants the grant bodies have is a tendency to favor radio play. And I don't disagree.
Fucking
Yeah.
stupid. I'm sorry. I have to jump in. Radio play, like who fucking cares nowadays? Seriously.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry,
Yeah.
I'll shut up.
Yeah,
Don't let
and you know,
Munzie hear you say that.
But come on, it's Canada. Like, fuck, who listens to the radio in Canada? Come on.
yeah,
Like,
and
seriously,
you know,
for metal bands, like who?
It's just there are so many other media platforms now that are equally
But
important.
But it's also
So-
Canada, and there's no metal radio in Canada other than like that. US.
Well,
Agreed.
maybe that's true. We definitely have it here in the
Yeah,
States.
Like
So.
that's my bitch. Sorry.
This
NJ.
Sirius, don't you guys get Sirius XM up there too? Or no, is that USA
no,
only?
That's
Oh,
US.
okay, I don't know anything.
Yeah. Yeah, no.
All right, all right.
There's nothing up here. You know, sorry.
All right.
yeah, and you know, like, and that's not to say that Sirius is not accessible to audiences here, but even with Sirius, there's the accessibility point of it is still kind of web based, unless you're driving a particular vehicle that happens to sponsor it.
Right,
But
sure.
but pardon me if I'm mistaken, NJ. They want to know about Canadian radio play only, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Right,
what
and
that's
that
what I was
wouldn't
trying
count.
to say.
Yes,
Okay,
Yeah.
that's why I was asking.
that is a significant point in the context of grants. Yes, Canadian radio play.
That's why I was asking, because she brought up Sirius, and okay, cool.
Yeah, and you know, like in this day and age, like especially in these more niche, not quite so mainstream genres, the subgenres of metal, punk, and hardcore, radio it puts those musicians at a disadvantage when radio is still such a primary metric. And then for stream counts and subscriptions, that kind of thing, there is more relevance with that. But I guess I find a certain level of objectivity is hard to attain with that, because how much of that is truly organic? How much of that is true audience response and engagement? I tend to feel that with the niche genres of music, outsider kind of music, that it does benefit and tend to be more gravitating towards or makes its way down organically to its audiences, because it is so outside, and isn't quite as easy to get picked up by bots, that kind of thing. So on the one hand, it's like, yes, it's more genuine, but in the perception of those who are bestowing these grants, you know, it's a numbers game. So how does, you know, like a Joe Schmo band from middle of nowhere Ontario, who's really given it and is trying to book tours and really giving it maximum effort to try to make it as a musician and realize their dream, how do they compete? How do they stand out and make themselves relevant? How do they make their efforts known?
And your idea to help with that?
Is to start my own grant. And it's the way it came by was actually, and I can't even say that it's my grant. I say that because it's like that conceptually, it's like, why not take control of it? I've had the privilege of partnering up with a wonderful collaborator. Her name is Sarah Kell, and she is a graphic designer and a merch printer, and she had this amazing altruistic idea where she said, you know, these were her words to me. She's like, I want to be able to give back to the scene. And I said, Sarah, how? What you got up your sleeve? And she said, well, I want to be able to push my brand, sell my merch, and I want a non-profit portion of that to be allocated to some kind of pot, some kind of vessel that can be reinvested back into the DIY, more local and more startup, independent based musicians that are in the area. And conceptually, it started off with us thinking about it within Kitchener Waterloo, Canada, because that's geographically where she's located and where we met. And in the brainstorming, we figured, why don't we find a way to reinvest that back in the form of a grant?
That's so cool.
Yeah, and it's not going to be anything super massive right away.
Sure.
But where we have our sights set realistically is that it would be a micro grant. And we haven't quite landed on what that figure is, but it would be in $1,000, $2,000. But that's the kind of startup capital that new bands that are ambitious and ready to build their careers. That's the kind of thing that's going to help them get into a studio, or pay for their gas while they're hitting the road touring, and also like take care of their marketing needs, such as paying for sponsored hits on, or not sponsored hits, sponsored ads on Facebook or Instagram. Really the kinds of things that would help get their feet off the ground.
Nice. And what better way to change the space than to enter the space and start changing the metrics that are being used that way? That's a great idea.
Yeah, but thank you. And there's still a lot of work to be done. And one of those things that we're really trying to hash out is those metrics, are those metrics. And just off the top of our heads, while we were brainstorming, accessibility is one of our top mandates. We want it to be a simpler process and based on merits that are, I guess, more grassroots. Like if you are putting the time in and the muscle, then yeah, like that it weighs way more than, it just carries way more weight in how we would be perceiving this grant evaluation process than what any of the other grant evaluation processes are like.
So I know we only got like 15 minutes left now because we've already talked a lot. My fault.
No, we have more than 15, don't we?
Do we? No, we got about 15 only, I think.
Oh my gosh, I haven't even started on my topics yet.
I know, but I want to go one last question on this grant thing before we go on.
How dare you?
I'm sorry, but so just so I have it 100% clear, NJ, and I could be mistaken on this, so correct me if I'm wrong. If a band wants to hit you up to help them get a grant, they need to have something established first, right? It can't be a brand new band just wanting money. They actually have to be able to show whatever they're called, I forget the name, that they are worth investing in, correct?
Yes, absolutely. When I say that the band, that this would be for bands that are starting out, it would be for not like net zero. It's bands who are generating that upward momentum already, but at a level that, for instance, you don't have to be Alexis on Fire to be able to get this grant.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. So if a band wants to approach you for grant writing, where should they be at in terms of their career? Or where, like, tell us an example if you're willing.
Yeah. I'd say a good case study or example would be bands who are playing shows. That's
okay.
Very important. It like right there is kind of the thing that kicks everything off. Like if you're playing shows, it means you're serious about demonstrating and showcasing your craft. and that you are in a position where you're ready to take it somewhere. And that's I think, you know, I feel like that's why this grant concept is a differentiator, is that you don't necessarily have to be at a very mature stage of your musical career to be able to get it. It's meant to help develop and support you if you are on the newer end of things, but can demonstrate you're ambitiousness, I guess.
I think I got it. Cool. So I guess we should start talking about EPKs.
Yeah. Well, we'll move into a space that's relevant to our entire listener base, because not everyone is in
Americans.
Canada.
Fucking Americans.
But EPKs, this is still a thing. Like, I don't really see them a lot, and I'm not sure what they're used for. So can you give us a little summary explanation of what EPKs are for, what scenarios they're for,
Yeah.
and what format works best?
So for those first time listeners, EPK is electronic press kit.
Yes.
So the simplest way to view it is essentially a band's resume. And its intent and purpose is that it is a concise way to be able to identify who the band is, their demographics, what genre style of music they play, what goals they have, and how to access the media that they have out there. So in terms of relevance these days, like we're able to access our information for not just music, for everything in a very fast and succinct way through the wide world of the internet. So it does beg the question, why do we still need an EPK when I have a website, I have Instagram, I have Facebook, I have YouTube, that kind of thing, that can demonstrate all those things. I'll start off first with how it relates to grants. Grants like EPKs, well, EPKs and bios. So in what I tell my clients is that if we are going to be applying for multiple grants through the course of the year, you know, let's not keep reinventing the wheel. Let's have this package, this electronic press kit that we can send over and over again, at least to capture that baseline information that's needed for these applications. And then where it then extends itself to convenience is in reaching out to and networking with booking agents and even other bands to generate other opportunities to play shows, and you know, just to be able to introduce yourself in a nice, quick, and easy way. Yes, these are also opportunities where you could just point them to your website, but it also is another means. And then the third way that I've coached my clients to on where they can utilize this is in PR. So again, being able to send out a resume type info package that's ready to be consumed and digestible, particularly if you are sending out mass amounts of emails. It's a quick and easy attachment that can be put in there. And, you know, there is a certain charm to it in that it's a little bit more, I guess, personalized in the sense that, you know, you could also have it be accompanied with any additional copy that you might have that's specific to whoever you're addressing it to, and have this nice little
Copy
package.
means extra text and words.
Yes.
Paragraphs of text.
Yeah. But I do, I find myself, I guess, hearkening back to the old days. I'm using air quotes here, where back in the day, their EPKs were actual PKs, press kits, and that was that definitely had a lot of charm in my mind, and that you're able to actually put all this information together in a nice package and be able to present it to somebody that you're meeting with face to face. But and this is a personal thing that I do, is I tend to design my EPKs in a format that is visually appealing if it were to be printed. And so there is that option that if you did want to print it and have a nice physical package, you could do that too.
Nice. So is it usually like, do you usually try to limit it to one page, or do you do like multiple page documents?
Multi-page, but I don't overload it with information and content.
What do you usually include?
So the usual sections in there are a bio, media, contact, and photos. So, but I tend to use a lot of the space to actually work in the pictures right into the pages, so that it has like a magazine print kind of feel. And yeah, it just makes it more visually engaging to look at and look through.
One key aspect that you didn't mention, or if you did, I totally did not hear you, for an EPK that I know works well, is also for booking shows. You can send it to promoters and stuff like that too. So,
Yes,
I
yeah.
did mention that, but
oh, did you? Then I missed that part then. I'm so tired today. I'm sorry, guys. So one more question I have on EPK is just, can you give a ballpark figure on what it roughly costs to do one with you?
I can be fully transparent with that.
That's fine too.
My pricing on it is standard. So my EPK package is $150. So with that, it is only digital though that I provide, so that if the client does want to print it, they would have to do that by themselves. But yeah, it's all digital.
nice.
Okay, and I got one final question about EPKs. I know we don't have a lot of time, but so now so when you're like including the music and stuff, or the links and stuff, so how does that work? Is it like a link to their Bandcamp, or is it a drive file, or how does that work?
So I try to make concessions for the possibility that whoever is receiving it on the other end might print it. It does have an old school kind of I guess feel to that part of it, but I'm trying to make sure that it's accessible in a way that whoever's on the other end, whether they are more accustomed to digitally looking through these press kits, or would prefer something in print, still be able to get that information. So what I tend to do is I will type out the links right on the page, but I'll provide a hyperlink capability too, so that if you're flipping through it digitally, you can hover and click.
Okay, fair enough. Aaliyah, I guess we should probably do some other questions before we have to wrap up.
Yeah, let's bounce on over to booking, and I'm going to dive right in with this kind of a doozy of a question. Do you have any tips for a band who has never toured, how to book their first tour? DIY.
Ooh.
DIY. Okay. The crux of DIY is in networking. And you yourself doing that direct networking. And
but networking's hard, NJ.
So how do you network
So
with
hard
promoters that are outside of your state?
No one wants to see who you're. Hey, it's province.
It's okay. Yeah, I can pivot between the two.
I'm just got to give her a hard time. Sorry.
Let's, I guess, look at this from a smaller scope, moving outward. And also, if you're a band starting out, typically your world is already, you're starting off with a small
Yes,
like
small radius.
world, small radius, and it's at that point that your networking at that level would consist of trying to talk and meet with local promoters, and establishing relationships with local bands, and from there building on that, you know, getting to meet more promoters that are further and further away from your radius, as well as other bands. And naturally, you'll start to encounter other bands too that are from out of state, out of province, that are on tour. And then you continue to build on that. You meet them, you engage with them, and see if maybe you could meet them in their state or province for a potential tour and showcasing. And it starts to snowball at that point, because your world starts to get bigger and bigger, and you start to access more and more and different kinds of individuals as that world grows. So it might start off with your local promoter who happens to know an out-of-town band, who happens to know another out-of-town band that is signed to a small DIY label. And then you end up working with that label, and you establish a bit of, I guess, credibility, and also with the label's help, additional distribution of your music that reaches an even wider and bigger audience. And then the cycle repeats, but just on a grander and grander scale. So yeah, but you know, it all starts with those bands, those musicians having to rub elbows and put in the time locally.
All right. I think that's about all we have time for.
It's talking too much, eh?
Hey, it's all
there's
good.
there's the Canadian
There's the Canadian A.
Yeah.
I believe that you may have wanted to say something about some shows coming up. So I'm going to give you the floor to talk about that right now.
Yes. I'm very excited to announce that there's 2 shows this summer, or 2 sets of shows this summer that I've been working with some out-of-town bands on. And promoting is not my main foray or main mandate. Forte, yes. It's but in certain cases, there's certain clients or certain friends that I definitely want to help out. And now that I have the resources and capability to do this, I will do it if I can. And they happen to be 2 bands that I greatly enjoy. One of them I've played with in my previous bands, with the previous iteration of their band. They're called Vaste. They are from Gatineau/Ottawa, in Canada. And they're going to be traveling through Ontario in May. I'll have the details up online. I just don't have a calendar in front of me right now, but they're doing a 4-day stint through Ontario, and I've set up 3 out of those 4 shows for them, along with quite a few other acts that I greatly enjoy. They are, I guess, more of a post-rock, sludgy kind of band. I guess if you think of bands like Neurosis, that would be the kind of music that they play. They're really great, so very excited about that. And then in June, I am putting together 3 of the Canadian dates for Mares of Thrace, who are a Alberta-based Canadian 2-piece doom sludge, just amazing band. And they're signed to Sonic Onion, and this has been their big comeback year. They were absent from the music scene for about a decade, and they've come back with a new record, and now that the pandemic restrictions have been lifted, they are touring and they're hitting it hard. So very excited to put on 3 shows for them, one in Montreal, the other in Toronto, and in Hamilton. So that's in June. And yeah, I'll have more details online on that.
All right. Well, I'll drop all your links to DadBod and anything you want me to link to in the show notes. Thank you so much again for coming on, and everyone listening. Until next time, make like a bull and throw those horns up.